Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Storytelling with special guest Amy Saidman. Amy is the founding director of Story District, which was named the gold standard in storytelling by the Washington Post. She's developed a unique curriculum to coach thousands of individuals, companies, and organizations with the support of a stellar group of storytelling coaches. In addition to producing hundreds of original storytelling shows at DC's premier venues, Amy is also the host and creative director of the podcast Story District Presents. She's a 5-time recipient of the Individual Artist Fellowship Award from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities and a nominee for the DCW 50's 2020 Remarkable Woman Award. My gosh, that's a lot. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for chatting with me today. I'm so excited to learn. I've obviously checked out all your website and your recorded shows, and I haven't had a chance to attend a live event, but I want to learn more. Let's start with your nonprofit Story District. Can you talk about how you came to start open forums for public speaking and storytelling and how your background led you down this path?
Well, it wasn't something I planned on. I didn't grow up being like, I'm going to run a storytelling organization when I grow up. But I was in a job I wasn't that happy in. I wanted to find a creative outlet. I was doing comedy improv when I was a kid. If you did ask me what I wanted to be, I'd say a comedian. I wanted to be like Carol Burnett, if anybody out there follows way back. But so one day I stumbled upon this. I was in the Washington City paper, and this ad for the Black Cat Club said open mic storytelling. And I was so intrigued. I'd never heard of such a thing. So I got to go. I liked it. I went back. I told a story about my hair, because about like how hard it was to be a curly girl in a non-curly era. And I won't get into it. But in the end, I kind of fell in love with it. And there was a job opening. I applied, I got the job. And that's how I ended up working for Washington Storytellers Theater.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the beginning of my introduction to storytelling. But the real hard decision came in 2005. So that was 1999.
Wow.
And I was working for them as the program coordinator. And in 2005, that's when the real hard decision came to me, which was that they were going to close. The ED had left and the board was kind of tired and didn't have the gumption to keep it going. And I was like, should I do it? But I didn't know how to run a nonprofit. I've been learning about nonprofit stuff, but in the end, I had been hosting the once a month open mic storytelling night, which was called the Speakeasy at the time.
Yeah.
And it was thriving. It was just, we kept getting more and more people and more enthusiasm. And I got my fix of being on stage. So I decided to take a leap of faith. And, long story short, that's how I got to where we are today. It built little by little. I found a way to find funding. I built a board. I built a team. We created this curriculum for classes. Now we work with consulting. So in 2015, we changed the name to Story District, and here we are.
So what is your approach to storytelling at Story District? I know you've got a unique approach that you teach people.
Yeah, we do. Over time, we've really built a very distinct philosophy and methodology. So our philosophy, I would say for your listeners who are professionals and business people running businesses, one thing to keep in mind is that storytelling is, I believe, quite distinct. And people mistake other things for storytelling. They might be doing, all of these things are valuable. A lecture, a speech, these things are valuable, but that's not storytelling. There are rules to storytelling. And if you do it right, then you are clicking into the magic of storytelling. And the magic of storytelling is that it's experiential, that you're inviting your listeners into your world. And by doing that, they're not just listening, they're experiencing it, they're living it. And by living it, they're connecting to you emotionally. They're literally like vicariously invested. And they care about what happens next in a way that there is no what happens next necessarily in a lecture. I need to know what plays out. I'm invested in this character. I'm rooting for this character. What happens? And that's really what makes it so memorable and powerful. So that's a big part of our philosophy. And our methodology, we do group, when we're teaching folks, we do group trainings with sort of to help get out all the basics of storytelling, narrative arc, and scene and substance and style. But we also work one-on-one with people. And in those sessions, we ask a ton of questions. We help you find your story, source material, and we start finding a shape and a meaning so that you can land that message.
So when you say experiential, you really mean standing up on stage and telling a story in front of people that you don't know.
Yes. It might be a stage, it might be a conference room, it might be a social media ad.
Yeah.
But the idea is that it's happening in place and time, it's unfolding in the moment. We don't know what's going to happen. So our curiosity is piqued and we want to know what happens. So it's very much, it's immersive.
Absolutely. And of course, that's got to be the biggest challenge for storytellers in terms of those fears. What do you see the biggest challenge for storytellers on your side as a coach?
I'll go with 3. To my top 3. Number 1, so many people say, I don't have a story, but they do have a
story.
Everyone has stories,
Yeah.
and people, it doesn't have to be the biggest story. Sometimes small things are very meaningful. You start to get good at identifying, well, what has legs? Like what in my life experience might I be able to turn into a story, which we can get into a little bit later. But one of the things we do is help people tap into their memories, help people think about, well, what were meaningful moments in your life? And really, you do have stories. The second thing that comes up is there maybe just basic stage fright or shyness. That people sign up for our courses just because they're like, I'm shy, I need to get out of or I'm scared to get on stage. And what's beautiful about storytelling is it's your life. You lived it. Yeah. So it's not about getting your material just right. You know your material. You lived it. And so it's and at least what we do when we work with clients and individuals is we really do create a very safe, nurturing space. Everybody's in the same boat, like feeling vulnerable, sharing their, stories and getting up on stage, but they're all really rooting for each other. They see them, we do these 7-week classes called Storytelling 101, or we do different versions of that we customize for businesses, whatever they want. But the group becomes very supportive so that by the time you do get up, you've worked on your story, you've practiced your story, and you're in an environment where other people are there to support you. So we have found that that's been a great way to overcome stage fright. And then the third thing I would say that is super common is that people are all over the place, that their story is just incoherent and they want to do this and they want to do that. And sometimes they're so knowledgeable. They don't even know where to start or end. They don't know what choices to make about what to keep, what to put on the shelf for another time. And we really help them give it a shape and make sure that their message is clear and on point.
That's great.
Those are 3 very common challenges. Sorry.
No, so the coaches work with you, and the coaches work with individuals in the groups to shape those stories, or do they help each other, or a combination of both?
We do a lot. The coaches are very play a very large role in helping each person get to a stage ready story. I say stage ready again, with stage being like a broad definition of what your stage is.
Yeah.
But we do open the opportunity for the classmates and colleagues to help each other as well.
And when people get up on stage, is there a time limit for them to speak?
Well, for our shows, which happen around the DMV and DC mostly, we say 7 minutes, but they tend to be more like 8 to 9.
Yeah.
And that's partly because every time you get on stage, like time, you lose total sense of time. But usually our shows have 7 to 8, people in the cast, and they're telling a story, a true story on a common theme. So, so it's like needs to contain within that 90 minutes basically. But if it's for a company or an organization, then it really kind of depends on what the occasion is, who is their audience, what is their objective, what is the setting that they personally have. So that it can really, that depends.
Interesting. All right, so let's go back to basics. So what is the elements of a good story?
We stress three things: structure, scene, and authenticity. So by structure, I'm talking about the narrative arc. And when we work with businesses, we try to make that as simple as you can. There's multiple ways to break down the narrative arc, but one real simple way to look at it is for every story, people who are afraid of formulas, get over it. There's a way to do this. So embrace it. You need a champion, a challenge, and a change. This is the simplest way that we talk about it. A champion is the protagonist. Now, in our version of stage, stories on stage, it's first person. I'm the champion. I'm the protagonist. I'm a character that the audience is going to follow, which by the way, is another distinction between if you don't have a protagonist, you're not doing a story. That might be something, that might be a speech or a lecture, but you need a protagonist. I'm following this. So you need that champion. And in order to really and your job is to make sure, so let's say I'm the storyteller. It's my job to make sure you relate to my point of view. And in order to do that, I have to let you into my thoughts and feelings. You have to understand what matters to me for you to know what to care about. So that's number one, a change. And then you could also have a different protagonist. Like if you've ever listened to something around story brand, the client is the champion. So you have to understand, the client's point of view, and then the storytelling coach is like the agent of change. But anyway, the next thing is a challenge. If you don't have a challenge, it's not a story. You have to be overcoming some other. There has to be, you want something, and then there's these obstacles in the way of the thing you want, or and that's the only, because you need that tension for it to actually just have a shape. Without that, it's just not a story. And then the last thing is a change. Story's not over until something changes. It could be big, it could be small. It could be as small as it could be a huge life change, but it could also be so small. Like, I thought this way, but now I think this way. I couldn't do a thing, and now I can. It doesn't have to be huge, but there has to be a before and an after, and something has to be different at the end of your story. Because why? So what? What's the so what? Why did we listen to this? So those are three things. And then as far as scene, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the experiential and making it immersive. Is it has, you need to share your thoughts. You need to paint a picture. It has to be taking as much as you need to share your thoughts and feelings, and I need to relate to the character. I need to know where I am. If I can't see in my mind's eye a place, you're not bringing us into your story. So place, painting that picture, and then be you, going into the authenticity piece. Be as you can be, and be as honest as you can be. And sometimes that means being honest with yourself so that you can be honest with your audience. That's where you really make those connections, because we feel it. If you're not being honest with us, if you're not being honest with yourself, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that, sometimes people are like so worried about being funny or something, but a lot of times, like, humor comes through just being radically honest, So those are the things we stress: the structure and scene. And those are like a few like little insights to how we approach structure and scene.
Did you come to this originally, this structure of how you do storytelling, or is this based on research or based on experience in terms of how you structure your programs and what makes a great story?
That's evolved. It's been a very organic process.
Yeah.
I mean, without telling my own stories badly, God knows, don't look me up, because some of my old stuff is out there on YouTube, but I want to take it down. But yeah, we started out, right? So we had this open mic, which was literally an open mic. You walk in. This was when it was called the Speakeasy. You walk in and sign up, and we would have no idea what would come. And then at some point, I was like, this could be better. It's very hit or miss. We started offering coaching, and then we started mandating coaching. And so just in the process of working with so many people, we evolved this curriculum, which started out, which was Storytelling 101, which started in 2007. So now we've like had many, many years and thousands of students to go through it, and thousands of people that our shows also started out being kind of curated, and now we have like months worth of rehearsals. So just like over time, we've built this methodology. Yeah.
I love that. So the people that listen to this podcast are mostly advertising and marketing professionals, and we have to sell for a living, all of us in some way, shape, or form. And so most of the listeners are used to storytelling, but they may not be used to giving compelling stories, right? So what are the tips that you would give to professionals in the field that might help them be better storytellers?
So some of the things I said, but I'll sort of maybe reiterate, again, the magic of a well-told story is that I'm in it and I care about you, the protagonist, or however so that the tricks to do that is establishing your point of view, creating a sense of place, having that I need to know what you want and care about what you want, or what your character, whoever that character is, that is compelling. And having that tension, having those challenges so that I'm waiting to, oh, how does this that's what really makes a compelling story. And then the so what? Why today? Why this? Why today? And no one being clear about what point am I trying to make? What is this universal theme that's going to land at the end of my story? It's not just don't talk for talking's sake. Like, it's easy to, like, if you're talking socially, that's one thing, but when you have an audience and you need to know the point you're trying to make. A couple other tips about just making it entertaining.
Yes.
Is voice. So I talked about place, but there's also voice. So if you have character, and you do that, we all do this naturally when we tell stories socially. You may say, instead of saying, "Oh, my dad always told me," you give the characters in your story their own voice. You let them speak for themselves.
Yes.
So instead of saying, "My dad always told me he was proud of me," instead, my dad looked me in the eye and said, "I am so proud of you." See, I don't have to act, but I let him speak for himself. That is very dynamic. And that goes back to the idea of scene making. That's a scene, so I'm learning, you're showing me how my dad felt versus telling me how my dad felt. And it makes it so much more dynamic. And I'll give advice in terms of telling stories. If you're telling them to an audience versus writing them somewhere, because marketers obviously have multiple platforms, but we get so many questions. Well, how do I actually tell this story and remember it, and tell it in a way? We really, really encourage you to find your natural voice. And to do that, you can't read, no reading, and you really can't recite. So it's not about memorization. It's about taking your story. You can do all this writing. You don't even have to write, honestly. You could start with an outline, but you need to get that down to a list so that when you're telling your story, you're connecting to the scenes in your story. So that I'm not thinking of the words, like the literal letters I wrote on a page and trying to remember them. I'm just trying to go to that place. If I want to take you, my listener, to that place, I need to go to that place. The more I see it in my mind's eye, the more you'll see it in your mind's eye. And the more you're connecting with your audience, you're like with each other. And then the other thing I would say is keep it tight, stay on the point, stay on point. You can hop off. You can do tangents, but do not forget your main thread. You have one main thread and one main objective, not multiple. So you can come back to it, but you cannot leave it and then go to another tangent and another. You can't leave it and never come back. Got to come back. And then the last thing, practice, get a buddy. Don't think you can just do it great just by thinking it and doing it. It's actually hard work. It is hard work to do it well. So if you can do a little bit of practice, say it out loud, if it's going to be, a verbal, to somebody or even to yourself on a recorder, there's really no way around to make yourself a great storyteller. There's really no way around practice.
Absolutely. Well, what about obviously pushing stories out these days on social media is really the most important way to get them to spread and to go viral. And, working in advertising, our spots are 60 seconds most and 30-second most. How would you recommend reshaping that narrative? Is it the same narrative that you would do for a short 60-second clip, or do you tell a larger story and you pull clips? What are your recommendations on that?
Yeah, you can tell a full arc and in a minute. You can tell, you can have scenes, you can use these tricks in a minute. You can have it spoken. You can also apply this to a video, like use these tools when you're creating a reel, if or a some kind of video, or even um maybe you have a photographic with some text. Like
Yeah.
these are useful tools no matter how long it is. And if you do it, if you don't have the arc and you don't have scenes, you don't really have a story. You have something else, but it's not a story. So if you want to practice the storytelling, those elements need to be there.
Got it. Got it. All right. Well, what are the key benefits of learning storytelling and actually doing public speaking?
Oh, it's so exhilarating. It's like one of the
Some
best.
people get energized by it, and I can see you get energized by it. I get stressed until I start speaking. Then when I am speaking, I'm completely fine, and when I'm done, I'm happy as a clam. But different people have different personalities.
Absolutely. No, I don't mean that it's without fear
Yeah.
or trepidation. I don't mean that.
Yeah.
But I will say one of the benefits, I mean, the biggest benefit is that you really, okay, let me explain what I mean by it's exhilarating. When you feel ready, right? So if you've practiced it and you feel confident about your content, you get up on that stage. And when you are there and the audience is responding and they're with you, that is exhilarating. That connection to your audience is exhilarating, and rewarding. It's very rewarding. And so that's what we aim to do, is equip people with the power to be a storytelling star for 10 minutes, and to feel confident on stage and to be able to, you're connecting with that audience, but you're not connecting, if you do it well, with everybody, with a common humanity. That is what it is. You're up there trying to be real, and that's feeding and fueling your audience, and let alone just like actually pulling it off where they're listening, right? They're like leaning in and they want to, and they're laughing at or gasping is one of my favorite things, when the audience is like, oh, but yeah, we have so many people, oh my gosh, that come through and they're like, there's no way I can do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And then they get up and they're like, wait, so I'm not saying everybody overcomes their stage fright at all, but even people with stage fright can do it and still find it rewarding and exhilarating. Yeah.
So ultimately it builds confidence. It helps you find your voice. What are the other benefits?
One of the benefits I don't think people realize is, I mean, it's extremely, actually, it's cathartic. There aren't that many things we do that we carve out time and space to reflect on our past.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. You have to dig into your past to find the source material for these stories. If you're doing the kind that we do, which is first person, again, there's other ways to apply these tools. It doesn't have to be that way. But if that's what you're doing, and it could be professional past, it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of professional situations that storytelling, there's a lot of professional content that fits. But certainly for marketing, it could be based on the product or the cause or something. But having the time and space and a coach for you to explore your past and think of it in a new way, and frame it based on whatever it is you're kind of trying to put together, is extremely, extremely cathartic. And it's an experience that's very hard to find in other situations.
And you could use the same principles of storytelling and writing, right? Obviously, because you're
absolutely
telling the same story. So thinking about that, or even starting with writing and then moving to speaking, is a good way to get that out.
Absolutely. Or speak and then turn that into a blog, or part of it, or turn that into a series of, reels or something. But yeah, and you'll see a lot of overlap. If you read, things about screenwriting or even fiction writing, there is overlap. there's certain things that are distinct just because it's first person and it's nonfiction and all that, but there's a lot of overlap with those things. Yeah.
All right. So you have a podcast as well called Story District Presents. I Did It for the Story. Can you tell us about the podcast?
Yes. Our podcast is such a great place for us to showcase our best talent. We do shows throughout the year. We used to do, pre-pandemic, we were at, like 30 shows a year. We record them. And I love the opportunity to showcase our best work.
Yeah.
So on our podcast, you'll hear stories that were told live on our stage.
Oh, wow.
And in our first couple seasons, we have interviews with the storytellers. So you get to know their process, a little bit more about their story and how they, how they put together a story. And that if for those, so it's kind of like we have two audiences. You might just want to hear a story and that's entertaining. And then we have another audience, which is like, you want to be a storyteller. So you will learn about storytelling through our podcast also, if that is something that interests you. And the most current season, we've pared it down. So we're not doing interviews, but we do one story. And then I find something that's a teachable moment. So if you are interested in telling stories, wait till the end. And I talk about like what you might take away from this particular story. So you actually have a concrete, like some of these things I've mentioned today are, points I bring up, but it gives you a concrete example of what I mean, when I mean like scene building or whatever it is.
So how can listeners learn more about Story District, and how does it work if someone who isn't in the Washington, D.C. area and can't attend, your classes in person? Do you offer things virtually? How do we learn more?
Our website is a great place to go, storydistrict.org. We have an active Instagram and Facebook, but Instagram more than Facebook. Of
course.
And those would be the best places right now. We have a YouTube. We post a new story every week on YouTube. That Story District Live is the channel. Not everything's safe for work. So know that. We have multiple audiences.
Okay.
So know that, and our audience is for adults. It's not for children. So decide who's in the car if you're going to listen to it, both the podcast and the YouTube. But those are great places to keep in touch with us. If you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter, and we have a couple shows coming up. I
would like to attend a show, but more importantly, I would like to attend one of your storytelling 101 classes. I'd love to make my husband do it with me, and maybe one of my teenagers. We'll see if I can make that happen.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Well, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Multi-generational storytellers, because my husband is a storyteller as well. So, and my son is a journalism student. So apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you, Amy. This was really great to learn so much about you and about Story District, and I hope to hear more about you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.